Hello and good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, today, wherever it is in the world, where you are. Welcome to In Conversation. Jeffrey Gibson, Laura Ortman, Emily Johnson, and Raven Chacon. My name is Audrey DeMola. I'm the Director of Public Programs at Socrates Sculpture Park. It's been a beautiful day, and we are gathering some very beautiful and very powerful people here tonight for you. Before we begin our program, we wish to respectfully offer with acknowledgement and gratitude that Socrates Sculpture Park is located in Lenape-Hoking on the ancestral lands of the Lenape, Matinecock, and Canarsie peoples. We are also grateful for the time and energy put into this evening and into the Monuments Now show in general. And on that note, want to send big, big love to our curator and director of exhibitions, Jess Wilcox. And with that, I want to introduce our MC for the evening, Socrates Curatorial Assistant, Danilo Machado. Danilo is a poet, curator, and public programmer living on occupied land. Interested in language's potential for revealing tenderness, erasure, and relationships to power, Danilo is curator of the exhibitions Otherwise Obscured, Erasure in Body and Text at Franklin Street Works, and Support Structures at the 8th Floor Gallery. A 2020-2021 Poetry Project Emerge Surface B Fellow and producer of public programs at Brooklyn Museum. Their writing has been featured in publications like Hyperallergic, Brooklyn Rail, and Art Papers. And they also organize the new Streamline residency for performing artists with Claire Kim. They are working to show up with care for their communities. And Danilo, we're so grateful that Socrates is now one of your communities. Hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Audrey, and thank you all for being here. Today's Brooklyn warmth has me feeling very optimistic, and it's such a great way to end my day as I watch the sunset from the window. I'm really excited for today's conversation. We'll be talking about the artist project at Socrates, both current and upcoming, as well as sort of talking about futurism. But before that, I will read everybody's bios and start the conversation sort of rooted in collaboration. So I'll read the bios first. Jeffrey Gibson is an interdisciplinary artist based in Hudson, New York. His artworks make reference to various aesthetic and material histories rooted in Indigenous cultures of the Americas and in modern and contemporary subcultures. Gibson is a recipient of a 2019 MacArthur Foundation Genius Grant. Next, a soloist and vibrant collaborator, Laura Ortman, White Mountain Apache, works across recorded albums, live performances, and filmic and artistic soundtracks, and has collaborated with artists such as Tony Conrad, Jock Soto, Nanobah Becker, Martin Bisi, Caroline Monnet, and Raven Chacon. Raven Chacon is a composer and a performer and installation artist from Fort Defiance, Navajo Nation. As a solo artist, collaborator, or with Post Commodity, Chacon has exhibited or performed at the Whitney Biennial, Documenta 14, Red Cat, San Francisco Electronic Music Festival, and the 18th Biennale of Sydney and the Kennedy Center. Every year he teaches 20 students to write string quartets for the Native American Composer Apprenticeship Project. He is a recipient of the United States Artist Fellowship in Music, the Creative Capital Award in Visual Arts, the Native Arts and Cultures Foundation's Artist Fellowship, and the American Academy's Berlin Prize for Music and Composition. He lives in Albuquerque, New Mexico, but is currently coming to us from San Francisco. And last but not least, Emily Johnson is an artist who makes body-based work. She is a land and water protector and an activist for justice, sovereignty, and well-being. A Bisi award-winning choreographer, Guggenheim Fellow, and recipient of the Doris Duke Artist Award. She is based in New York City. Originally from Alaska, Emily is of the Yupik Nation and since 1998 has created work that considers the experience of sensing and seeing performance. Her dance functions as portals and installation, engaging audiences within and through space, time, and environment, interacting with a place's architecture, peoples, history, and role in community. I'm so excited you all are here. Um, I want to begin the conversation with each of your relationship to one another and more broadly, uh, drawing from the central role that collaboration plays in your practices. So I'd love to hear about how you all know each other, where you met, how magic has brought us into one Zoom room once again.
I guess I'll start. I have known, I think the first time I saw Raven perform was in Albuquerque. No, I'm sorry. It was actually in Santa Fe, probably in 2008. So that's, 13 years ago. And I didn't know anything about Raven before that. And somebody had directed me. He was having a performance and I went and saw it and I've followed him ever since then. Laura and I definitely crossed paths probably as early as like early 2000s in New York City. We were both a part of an exhibition at the American Indian Community House when it was on Broadway, and yeah, I wish we had gotten to know each other much better earlier. But I really got to know her again through her music, and I knew that she was doing collaborations with Brad Kalhammer, who was another Native artist who I was paying attention to here in New York, and yeah, and then I just sort of got sucked in as a fan of both of them, and then Emily and I were introduced through a mutual friend, and I think the first time we met, she came to my studio, and then we followed and just have kind of. I think I kind of. I mean, for me, Emily has been a good sounding board and like a great supporter of somebody who I think just being, Indigenous in New York City and being a creative person, just sort of a great kind of context. And but this is the first time we'd worked together. So I know when Jess approached me about this and we were talking about how to program the monument, this was my first roundup of 3 people that I said, if we can do this, if we can pull this off, these are the people that I want to work with. And fortunately for me, all 3 of them agreed and have put a tremendous amount of energy and time into making this happen, especially during a crazy year. So thank you all.
Yeah, I remember those early shows, group shows at the community house, 708 Broadway. And that's back when I was practicing more visual art than music and stuff. And then Jeffrey and I were going to be world famous artists together and with everybody else. So, yeah, and then through the years, here we are. So thank you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, no, thank you.
I've seen those flyers of you two at American Indian Community House and like the archives and different exhibits that they've done lately. Jess Wilcox asked how I knew Jeffrey, and I was like, I mean, I at the moment I couldn't remember the studio. I couldn't put it together how, and I described it as like, I've known him for like lifetimes. I don't know. I've known him for a really, really long time, which isn't actually in this physical world true, but I feel like that. And likewise, I know that we like sometimes share, share the tears through some challenging moments and our fears, I think, but then also, think through and the joys of activating these futures with our kin and our works. And and Laura and I have a standing date from the Lower East Side. We haven't quite met up yet to do that, but I just love Laura and your work so much. And every time I'm hearing, like I hear you, I think that I hear your music like it resonates so much that it's kind of always present a little bit, like through the city. And I always think of you walking from across the bridge, like from where you live over to the Lower East Side. And I think of music like just following you. Like you're like present in that way in this city for me. It's really extraordinary. Yeah, and Raven.
Tinnitus goes with my sound for sure.
Yeah.
A little tinnitus, healthy dose.
And Raven and I are coming up on a new project together, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, it's just a small world, you know. The same dollar, I think, just gets passed around the same people, actually. But no, it's nice. It's nice we could all come together for this. And yeah, I met Jeffrey at this gig I played in Santa Fe, and I remember it. I remember meeting Jeffrey briefly, but I remember the gig because they had these little speakers. I show up and the speakers are tiny, and one of them caught on fire actually from so I had to play the rest of the show with just one speaker. I guess I burned it out, whatever. And Laura and I have been playing together for, I think, 13 years now too, maybe around that same time. And we were the only ones at that time, only musicians doing this kind of experimental thing. And so it was bound that we would meet up and collaborate. Now there's a lot more people kind of doing this thing, but back then it was just Laura and I that I know of. And yes, Emily and I are working on something.
Yeah, maybe towards the end, I'm curious to hear a little bit more about those futures. Yeah, thank you all for sharing some of these like ever interlocking threads and relationships that we bring into the space here for everybody. And Sarah, if you could pull up the PowerPoint. Great. So we'll start going through each of your a little sampling of each of your work. And if you'd like to say sort of a few words before we watch some of these clips, and then any one of the panelists can sort of have any reaction or question about the work that we just saw. So first, Jeff, if you want to tell us a little bit about She Never Dances Alone.
Yeah, I mean, so Sarah Ortegon and I have also worked together before. We worked on a video project with the Denver Art Museum in 2015. And Times Square Arts approached me to do something in Times Square. And I decided to work with the video monitors just as an opportunity that I don't know where else you have that opportunity. And so Sarah came out here from Colorado. And it's actually, you know, we were videoing her with some traditional singers, and then at some point she said, you know, can I put on A Tribe Called Red? And we were like, sure. And she put on the song Sisters, and that's where really what she's dancing to, and ultimately Sisters gave us permission to use the music, and yeah, it was totally wild. This was I think it was on March 7th. Last year when this happened, what we're going to show here, and when it was in Times Square, it was pretty wild. This was like a week before going into like full on lockdown. So I'll just say like that clip is part of a there are three 2 minute and 57-second videos, and for Times Square Arts, what they did was they occupied about, I think it's about 70 monitors throughout Times Square. So it plays for it's called Midnight Moment, and it's about the last 3 minutes of every day. Due to COVID, it ended up running for, I want to say, almost like 7 months that it was up there, which was really, I thought it was great, because when you're there, Sarah multiplies to about 180 people, 180 dancers at different moments throughout the 70 screens, and it was really, really amazing. And I think kind of just by chance that happened, and it is a dance of healing. It is a dance that celebrates matriarchs, and it is also a dance that Sarah dedicated to women and LGBTQ plus people, members of our communities who have gone missing or unreported, undocumented violence. So yeah, it was a great collaboration for me.
Great. Panelists, any thoughts? If not, we can move forward. All right, let's bring back the PowerPoint. So next we'll show a few images, a few still images from your work at Socrates, which is the setting for the two current or past performances and one future performance that'll activate the sculpture. And yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything particularly, obviously, you've talked about it before, and definitely, like, if our audience hasn't checked out your conversation with curator Jess Wilcox, definitely check that out. It's on our website and our Facebook page too. But I'm curious, 6 months, almost a year later, both from conception and from install, any sort of reflections about the monument as it is sort of on its way out of the park.
Yeah, I mean, I think I will say that it has become something that I didn't really expect. I don't know if I knew how to have expectations for something like this. Especially, I think when we were in the planning period and once we had committed to this, we were not in quarantine or lockdown due to COVID, right? So we were imagining it really being about live community being there. And I was super excited for like anyone who loves Laura, who wasn't unaware of Laura's, performance. I was like, you have to come see it. Once everybody signed on, I just kept saying, I was like, if you've never seen this, even if you have seen it, you have to come see Laura, you have to come see Emily, you have to come see Raven. But I think ultimately what happened, which I think is interesting when we went into lockdown, was I really felt like the one medium that had the chance of surviving was performance. And so I felt like, we immediately shifted to the kind of not so much just documentation, but creating videos that in many ways are their own experience. Even if you weren't there, they're edited to be an experiential viewing of a performance. And I think the people who we worked with, Chelsea Knight, Tristan Shepard, Itziad Barrio, like they did such an incredible job. And I've also never made anything this big before. So when I proposed it, it was on paper, and it was, of course, based off of, Cahokia mound structures. But literally it just kind of rolled off the tip of my tongue when Jess asked me. And, sometimes I'm just in a period of going like, you know what, I'm just going to say the first thing that comes to my mind. I'm not going to think about what's practical. And when Jess and Chris Zerbes from Socrates, mapped it all out, that's when I started realizing how big it was. And it wasn't until Laura performed that I even paid any attention to the fact that it was part of the skyline of New York City. That this view was so impactful and provocative. and so non-European. That none of that had occurred to me until like the experience of seeing people perform on it and activate it. So yeah, I'll stop there for time reasons, but it's been a huge learning lesson for me in the most positive way.
Yeah, we have this great like snow image, and it's been so striking to see it sort of, I don't know, fade
Yeah.
and turn blue you know, as it's continued to stand in the park.
Yeah, and it's going to have possibly, at least right now, as far as we know, one or two next iterations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I've learned from here, the elements of the sun and the fading, and like I'm excited about the other artists who we're going to bring in to interact with things. And it was interesting because I think there's been so much online kind of media and art culture during this past year. I was surprised how far these images have traveled, that people are aware of it in all parts of the country. Like, I mean, I think in particular, like the Indigenous art world is relatively small, but it travels really quickly. And to be quite honest, like I knew when I did this, I was like, that is a significant part of the audience who I hope to speak to. Like that's really in many ways who it's for. And that audience isn't necessarily in New York City.
Great. Let's move to Laura's trailer. Yeah, Laura, I don't know if you want to introduce this performance in any way. This will be a short trailer clip from a full performance video that's also available on our YouTube page of your performance last summer.
Absolutely. Seeing that first video of Jeffrey's at the Times Square, that was the last kind of big outro I did in March a year ago with my friends Nanobah Becker and Dea Casador. We were just like running around the city, just last call, and we went to an empty Times Square and saw his video. And we were like the only ones there, and we were just like, all right, and kind of high-fived ourselves goodbye into next time we see each other. And so during the lockdown and through everything that's happened, July, this performance was my first live performance outside of like all the heartbreak and uncertainty and the plans and the vision. And we had, that meant a lot to me. I mean, it was still a private concert, but we had the Indigenous Kinship Collective there, friends of mine, Jeffrey, people at Socrates, everybody that kind of chimed in to make this happen. And then it happened after 2 rain date cancellations. Right. So the third day, the sun came out and it was so hot and we were just sweating and just happy together. So playing up there on top of the big sculpture along the river where I've always wanted to play, where dreams come true, and the colors and the light and the camaraderie around not being isolated, it blew me away. And I will never forget this for as long as I worked hard at the set and stuff, but there was just things that happened because you're just like there along and seeing the skyline and the water and just seeing your friends and you're just like, wow, let's go. So yeah, this is a little glimpse, like, yeah. I remember meeting with Jeffrey upstate, and we were just sitting there in his house and talking about, these collaborations, and then he was showing me the images and the, blueprints and developments of the ziggurat, the Kokia mounds, and I'm from Arizona, but I grew up along the Mississippi River, and I had been to Cahokia Mounds as a little kid. They would take us on school trips there, and it's along the Mississippi, one of the biggest rivers in the world, and the river is definitely one of my muses as far as my work and my sound. And so when he was talking about Cahokia, I haven't been back there since, and I've seen so much great fascination about these structures, and to know that that at least from a little kid and a little touch of the Mississippi, and being able to play on top of this piece and interact with it like what I do with the crazy like violin and stuff, and talk about distance of where you are, where you're from, and what and how things have come around, and I was blown away, and it was just kind of meant so much to me. We did a sound check. I forget, it was like a month or so, I forget when that was, but Socrates let me climb up to the very top, and I just went up there, and I was just bewildered. I was like, "Woo, free!" Like just jumped on top of it, and there's like a metal grate. I could tell its strength, and I was like, "This is it. We're going to the top." And then right before the performance in July, we were gathered in a circle, and after a little bit, I nudged my friend Dea Casador. She's also a White Mountain Apache, good friend of mine. I nudged her, and I was like, "I have this idea. I got this big long pole rod. I want you to scrape the inside structure of the mound, the monument, like a drone, but our own personal drone." And then I had already had planned ideas of playing like drums and rhythm and beats and a little mystery, but just definitely acoustics of the real thing, the real structure that it is, and let that sound come alive first. And thanks that it actually happened. So, and then just continued to climb all over it. The Kinship Collective were fantastic. They lit off pink smoke, and just playing to the boats, the water, the sun, the cityscape. I was imagining the reverb and stuff off the water, and being up, however high that is, and going higher, and even I knew they were doing a really high documentation of this performance and stuff, and in this thing of this kickoff after quarantine and everything was really touching when I saw the final footage, seeing the drone cameras. During the live show, you could hear them, which was fine with me because we were climbing all over each other. I appreciated that because nothing's precious at that point. But watching the final video, and there's this one shot where the drone video is directly overhead of me while I'm playing, kind of just like hovering there. And I have never seen myself from that angle play before. And it wasn't like I felt small. I was just like, I felt like I was planted there, and I never had that kind of fascination before. I thought that was really, really, really fantastic. I just I remember when me and Jeffrey were going over the plan, the energy and excitement. He was like, "Well, okay, so Laura, how do we know like your piece is going to end?" And all I could say was that there will be a lot of kisses. There'll be a lot of kisses. and that was just the only way I knew how to wrap up this big big thanks and appreciation for you know, how we all came together, and I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, someone in the chat sort of mentioned it was the first time that they saw a virtual, like online performance that moved them so immensely. So definitely breaking through that barrier that sometimes has existed for us in the last year, trying to make this like screen feel, you know, like vibrate and like feel real. And I think that, you know, the live stream and this documentation footage, I think there's like some magic in that is like beyond any limitations of the screen. So next, we'll watch a little clip from Emily's "The Way We Love and the Ways We Love Better: Monumental Monument Toward Being Better Beings." Yeah, do you want to say something? That's such a, like, I think about that title so much. Such a great title. I don't know if I need to say anything to introduce.
Yeah, I will just introduce by sharing with you just two things. One, the performers in the full film, just because their names won't be seen right here in this short clip, but like Laura, you were talking about getting together. Like when we got together as this group of folks who were gonna perform together, I think we had one rehearsal, if I'm remembering correctly, and yeah, just once we got into that circle to have our first time together, I was just my breath was a little bit taken away by the kind of the momentousness of that very simple moment of being able to come together. And so these incredible performers are Angel Acuna, Nia Celeste Clark, Linda LaBeija, Denisha Macklin, Annie Minghao Wang, Angelica Mondo Viana, Ashley Pierre Lewis, Katrina Reed, Kim Severino, Sasha Smith, Stacy Lynn Smith, Paul Tsao, Kim Belsey, and Sugar Bendel. And Natana River, who is from the Caddo and Delaware Nation, she's Lenni Lenape. They wrote an invocation that I share in the full length of the piece. And I recently watched the full video and had a witnessing event afterwards with some other colleagues, and Natane's words really struck me in a different way. Struck me again, I think, in the reviewing of the video. And they say something. I'll mistake it a little bit because I'm remembering, but they say something like to stand against this city, to sit against this city, to sleep against this city, to dream against this city. And I got to speak their words during the performance, but to rehear them spoken back, those are such strong words coming from someone whose family has been displaced from here. And I really appreciated what they brought to this performance, and I was honored to be able to share their words through it. Yeah.
Marcia. Sylvia. Alexandra. Aaliyah. Marion. Vivian Sula. Bella Marie. Yvonne. Tabitha. Jade. Mariella. Anna.
there's two movements I want to just talk about briefly, like in the context of monuments and land and relationship and responsibility to land and land's people and ancestors, and thinking of this monument as a in a lineage of earth mound monuments. And there's a movement that the performers and I do that's like this low, deep, like stomping squat, and it resonates really, really beautifully on the structure itself. And then there's another movement that's a little more tender, that's a little more like your feet stepping forward and back, forward and back, forward and back, like a little toe touch forward and back. But in both of those movements, and wherever those movements happen, either on the physical land or up on the structure, I'm thinking of, and the performers are thinking of like pulling the land, like pulling the land up, like almost like the dirt would come up to meet the soles of your feet and then fall back down, you know. And so it wasn't so much a pounding down, though there is that. There's also this like pulling up of earth to meet, and so our energies can meet. And I like to think of that through this structure and through other structures. Whenever I'm making performance works, I like to think through the physical boundaries of the place, through the walls, through the floor, to meet the actual air, to meet the actual land, and to have the relationship of the performance be with those elements and with those places and those histories. Yeah, so I share that.
Thank you. And next we'll have, we'll be showing an excerpt from a work by Raven. The work is called Report, and the video contains audio of gunfire. Raven, do you want to say anything to introduce?
Yeah, just that this has nothing to do with Jeffrey's project. We haven't done our project yet. It's coming though very soon. And I suppose we could have shared a clip from that, but we hope you'll tune in to see that live when that happens. And it's still in progress actually, but we needed a clip, so I decided to show this one because, I mean, there's a lot into this piece that would take a long time to talk about, but it's an example, it's an early piece from 2001, and it was probably an instance where I brought together my love and appreciation of noise and very loud music and writing scores, so putting dots on paper for other musicians. And it was about this piece for me. I mean, it didn't start off as anything anti-gun or pro-gun or anything like that. It was purely sonic, and it was an exercise in giving myself limitations, the most limitations I could, so that I couldn't affect things like pitch or timbre or volume. Really, everything was reduced to just options of rhythm. And when I think about what I made for the collaboration with Jeffrey, I think it falls in line with that same kind of thinking. I limited my instrument really to being a drum. And this was done because I'm not able to come in person because of COVID, and we're deciding to do something completely remote, which I normally wouldn't do. I mean, it's hard to pull off, and it's really hard to watch Zoom performances unless you're Laura or Emily. You're watching one of their works, it's hard to compete with that, but we're all a little fatigued of this kind of thing. So I'm happy that we're going to be able to maybe do something a little bit different and maybe present more of a kind of non-durational or non-linear kind of cut, as if, not that you're watching documentation of a performance, but rather maybe even to speak quite literally, what's inside of the pyramid, what's ongoing, what's the static time around the sculpture. So that's why I chose this clip.
2, 3, 4.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing. And that performance will be live stream on March 23rd, rain date March 24th. And look out on our social media and website for time, and we'll be streaming it on Zoom and Facebook, and we're excited to have the structure be activated once more before it goes off. I think a few of you sort of talked about that word structure in a few different ways. So thinking about the physical structure, the inside and the outside, thinking about the structure, how structures relate to the land and the environment, and even structures of sound, like you were describing, Raven. And one can make connections between the physical structures and all the sort of social political structures that that shape the ways that artists and that communities are seen and respected or not. So I'm curious if you'd like to share some sort of thoughts about that, either related to the monument at Socrates or sort of more broadly.
Danilo, is that for somebody specific?
No, and for anybody.
I mean, I'll just say that, I think that there are, the way that, for instance, like communities, like Native communities are organized, self-organize themselves, I realized like one of my goals when it comes to talking about like those communities is just for people to acknowledge and realize how immensely diverse they are, and this one word, Indigenous or Native American, really fails at encompassing that. And those structures, those structures of community might share something, collectively, but ultimately we're collectively so much more rich because of how different they can be and how those philosophies are different and specific, from everything to, traditions and beliefs, but also to the land, the local land that that are our homelands. So I think it's and that network now, it was important to me. I'm Choctaw and half Cherokee, but it was important to me to choose people to kind of to reflect that, that this the native art world, the indigenous art world is connected, but I guess one of its challenges is that we all exist in these different parts that are pretty spread apart, pretty spread out. And so there's a lot of self-motivated support that has to happen in order for that network to be effective. And I know everyone here contributes to that. And I think it's also, we're all not at the beginnings of our career. We're all established artists. And I don't think I could have expected improvisation or people to get away with like one rehearsal before we did something. People needed to be really seasoned in their practice, that we can trust each other on that similar level. But that's a credit to each person individually, that they have committed to their practice.
When one thing that I think about is that at the beginning of the performance of The Ways We Love and The Ways We Love Better, we gifted black flint corn seeds it's part of an ongoing process and effort that was from these seeds begun in 2019 with an organization called the Lenape Center and First Nations Dialogues. And so the seeds that we gifted during the performance were seeds that had grown at the community garden that I'm part of on the East Village. And this corn is growing now in many places through Lenape-Hoking, and it was planted initially as an effort to call people back home. And so through the performance, we offered seeds to folks and with instructions to care for them and then plant them in the spring and then send them to Natane, who will distribute to community, also save some for replanting, also eat some. And at the end of the performance, we also planted tobacco seedlings at Socrates Sculpture Park. And Camille Usher the other day in a conversation about this performance, she was imagining like a city. She was describing that in relation to some Black speculative fiction writings and thinkings of N.K. Jemisin, and thinking about like the plants have overtaken the city, right? And maybe that's the city that we want to live in. And so I think about those seedlings growing and coming back this spring coming up. I think about these seeds that will be planted, and also that responsibility. It was a you can think of it as a nice thing to gift someone seeds to plant, but you're also really asking somebody to meet that relationship and to meet that responsibility, and then to care for those seeds and that food and that relationship further, ground and body and relationship and history, and trying to create a pathway of relationship. And I, in thinking about structures too, and I already talked about kind of physically pushing against this, sometimes the structures we impose on ourselves. I think I think about an Indigenous and a Black liberated and sovereign and like joyful future, and that we need it to be real and we need it to be syntactular and rooting and reaching like up to the stars and the sky and into the ground in this like kinstillatory fashion that is about systems, that is about our monuments, whether those are conceptual or physical. It is about making and magic and planting and these relationships and ceremonies and gatherings and resting. And this, I think, rebuilds the world. And in that process, do we also have to rebuild institutions, particularly, and so here thinking of structure as institution, do we have to rebuild institutions, particularly ones that are upholding white supremacy? Do we have to topple sometimes those statues that are upholding white supremacy? Yes, we have to do that along this way as we build that future, because those monuments, whether they're a statue or a university, have to meet this future that we are all calling for, that is about justice and equity forward.
Yeah, and yeah, Laura, I was so like struck by your drumming on the inside beams, and what does it mean to bang and to make noise on the inside of a structure.
I'm a big underground aficionado here in New York. Like the subway is one of my muses too. I mean, I live under at least 300 of them right now. Can you hear them? But it's just always like this constant undergroundness. I'm fascinated by it, and I don't know if it makes any sense. But I was trying to figure out what do I play this metal with, and I don't I took my crowbar from my truck. It's my wheels. It's part of my part of my bling, part of my how I motivate and get around, and then the other one was just like a chime off one of my wind chimes,
Mm.
And and that had its own sound too. And they're very off balance, and I'm good with my hands. I'm good with my arms. I like, give me this, give me that, and trying not just to play anything, which I will, but but it was a lot of fun, to put a lot of care and concern into you know breaking out the structure. Like after those 2 rain dates, yeah, you did see the wheat paste kind of fade away, and get, because it's already wavy and graphic-y. It's beautiful that way. And then after all the rain, it was just like even more like swirled around and taking on its own elements, and then the heat. It was great. Jumping over puddles on the inside. And but one thing I loved after the performance, the kickoff, was gathering along the river with the Indigenous Kinship Collective. And we just sat along the river for hours, just like drinking and smoking and just being comfortable around each other for the first time in a long time. And that was part of it too, just hugging up and being together in that way. So I understand that it's here in New York till the end of March. So I'm going to go back. You guys open tomorrow?
Yeah, every day. And, until dusk. And lastly, I'm curious, Raven, how you're thinking about sonic structures and physical structures as you and Jeffrey and sort of conceive of this last activation, this sort of this closing moment, coming up on the 23rd.
Well, I don't know if you guys are open or closed, but we planned it in case you were closed, and thought that all of the sound, or a lot of the sound, would come from the inside of the sculpture. So we're placing at least 2, maybe more, subwoofers inside of the pyramid, the ziggurat, to shake this structure, to allow it to resonate, and turning that into the instrument itself, since there can't be a performance around it. At the same time, Jeffrey will be me. He'll play where I would have played. He'll be masked, like I would have been masked. COVID or not, I would have been masked. And he'll perform the instrument that I play, which is a beam of pink noise at the audience. But there won't be an audience because you guys are closed. So he'll aim it at an imaginary audience, or maybe, like Laura said, the river, the buildings, the trees. And yeah, it'll be an opportunity. I don't know how we'll document that, but I imagine that everyone will get to see, like in Laura's performance, the inside, the inverse of what you see on the outside, the kind of folded in version of it before it completely goes away. And there's a lot more things that we're planning and that Jeffrey has in mind that I don't want to say too much, because we hope everybody will watch it.
Well, I'll say there was a question that I wanted to respond to, but what I'm planning to do with what Raven has contributed, because I've learned so much about video. And I think, for instance, when you saw the clips of both Emily and of Laura's performances, we're able to give you views that would be impossible if you were there in person. So all of that editing, and even when we work with Tristan Shepard on sound, he's really able to make things happen in sound that we really wouldn't have been able to experience in the same way. So I think I plan on taking advantage of what we've learned about the structure itself and some of the things that we've wanted to do, but doing everything live, and like if you were going to go inside of the structure, if you were going to play the interior of the structure, we were always questioning, you know, like, is that like, what's that relationship to the audience? But when you bring in video and we can bring that camera in and around different places, we can edit it to make something really, really impactful. The question was, what prompts did I give people? And truly, you know, part of it is out of respect of each person's individual practice, but I asked for collaboration from these three people in a very, I hope, humble way. You know, I didn't feel like my job was to give any prompt other than to try to say, you can do absolutely anything you want on this, and I will do what I can to try to accommodate it. I was happy to work behind a camera, to like hold a ladder, to perform, to whatever it was that I think was necessary. I was very happy to do. I see my contribution as the structure, and this kind of cohesion of a presentation of like an accumulation of material, you know. But really, I've learned a lot about myself in terms of collaboration. I feel like, I don't know, for me and any one of the three of these artists here to try to find a singular project where we both have contributed to would require something radically different than what's permitted here, you know. So I kind of really relied on and well, I'll say the other thing, what I think is really interesting about all three of these artists is if you had the chance to see it live, you're actually not really witnessing a performance. You're witnessing somebody manifest something. And I think anybody who had the chance to witness things live felt that very much. I guess I think in a performance, especially, you know, because the ziggurat can function so much as a stage, you know, thinking of it as like a performer on a stage with a frontal view to an audience. Some of it was like, we have to think of it as a sculpture. We have to think of it as a landscape. We have to think of it in ways that are not about a stage, even though it will serve that way ultimately. So the idea that it can become a body, a vessel, an instrument, it can become an architecture, it can be a stage. You know, working with such seasoned performers, it can become all of those things within 10 minutes. And that's something that I feel like I didn't want to get in anyone's way with any specific prompt about, because in many ways it's not about me, right? Everyone's performances, they're not about me. Raven's is probably the one that I will be you know, taking responsibility for a lot of decisions in terms of what that collaboration is. But so yeah. And
yeah, I wanted to ask a question from the audience, from Karen, who says, I have a question about New York. New York, going back to what Jeffrey said about a program not necessarily made for New Yorkers, Laura commenting on how much things have come around, and Emily setting her performance up against the city. What is the most appropriate way for cultural allies to honor New York's own indigeneity?
anybody want to jump on that?
I think we could have. I think there are many ways. Just one way that comes to mind, and is mostly comes to mind right now because it's part of my work, part of my joy, part of my talent to work too, is a little bit what I think. Sorry, I've had a few Zooms today, so if I haven't said this, forgive me. I think I said it in this Zoom. Is to build substantive. I can't even speak now. Build substantial pathways for Lenape people to return home as they wish, as they need, as they want to, as they're working toward it, if they want to, etc. So obviously that means building building broad and deep relationships with the Lenape diaspora, Lenape folks here, Lenape folks in the diaspora, and shifting the space that you, we, us occupy to create those pathways. And there are multiple ways and multiple processes and multiple steps toward those processes and pathways. That's one thing that comes to mind.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think one of the things, like I imagine all of us on here may have been asked to advise somebody on a land acknowledgement at some point. And I have told people, and this is literally my personal perspective, I appreciate land acknowledgements. I do think that they're the beginning of things that need to happen. But I also feel like, you know, what people should do is commit to building the relationships for a long-term dialogue to map out some mechanisms that allow for it to move beyond just a land acknowledgement and into something more viable and supportive of the communities who have been affected. And so, yeah, I think, and that is a lot of work. I will say that is a lot of work. So it's not a simple thing to task somebody with. But I've begun to think of land acknowledgements as an admittance of guilt. And if we're prepared to say, yes, we were on stolen land, then doesn't that automatically indicate that there's a next step towards what we do about that? I don't have an immediate answer, but I do think I feel very confident that is what that is, you know. So pride in the land acknowledgement is also fraught with like, okay, that's great. What are you going to do? And I think, you know, I also want to give credit to the Indigenous Kinship Collective for the land acknowledgement that they provided, because I think that was what that was. It was a demand to acknowledge that this is what this really is.
I am a musician. I'm not, these Zoom things are amazing because I get to use my words. But I like to turn it up, and I like to lots of action and just presence. And if you see me, that's good. But you just have to kind of put your ear to the ground, pay attention. And I take myself seriously too, and far as being a visitor way over here. I mean, I'm from the desert, and I live on the second floor all these years. And I ask myself, and I see the community and the world around me, and that informs my sound and actions a lot.
Mm.
And I don't know who asked the question, and it's a question I hear often, but that's a nice thing about a question. It has so many like circles of answers around it. So I say, turn it up. It's good, lots of possibilities in that.
Yeah, definitely. And just to end, I sort of wanted to have a moment of reflection around futurism and the future, and wanted to draw from an essay by Luke Hornham, which is in our upcoming Monuments Now publication catalog, which is coming out this summer. We're very excited. It includes the full show, Jeff's piece, Xavier Simmons, Paul Rodriguez-Jones, as well as the 10 call and response artists, and what we're calling the next generation, the monument that our soccer teams, also built for this expansive and growing show over the last year plus, So look out for that this summer. But Luz starts their essay with this. So they write, "A ship grows in Queens, not a ship like those that brought the men of monuments to the land they made into property, a spaceship, against a skyline of glass and steel, materials that scrape and cut the commons. This ship imagines a different production of place." Yeah, I'm curious about your thoughts or reflections about, future and futurism.
Well, when I was saying before that I think these, Emily, Raven, and Laura all manifest something, I think that, and I'd like to think this about my own work, that we are manifesting a future. And there's a very like present tense quality to all of our work, right? And it's like it's a hard won present tense, I'll say that, because I think generationally, for many reasons, we are not placed in the present tense externally, so we have to manifest the present tense internally and within our communities, and then the responsibility of carrying and distributing that present tense publicly is the work I think that many Indigenous artists do. And that's incredibly hard. And so I think, especially with like so much online programming and the ability, I was talking to we had a little meeting the other day, and I was saying how, the music world is not my world. The performance world is not my world. So to be able to tap into those worlds and the networks of people who are paying attention to Laura, to Raven and Emily, is about building that network of self-recognition, of internal building that I was certainly raised to not expect others to do for me. That is totally on me. It is totally on us. And so I think, whether it's, right now, I hear from people and they say, oh, there's so much going on with Native artists right now. Like, isn't it exciting? And I say, yes, it is exciting. There's a lot going on in New York City, more than I have ever seen in my 21 years here. But my expectation isn't that other people will be who carries that forward. It will be us. And so it's about kind of using, I think, our work to manifest and to make things happen.
Yeah, I really appreciate Jeffrey talking about the present tense. My work is not about the future. It gets lumped in there because I use electronics and things like that. But no, it's my fear is that my work would be interpreted or positioned as being perpetually deferred, like it's something that's going to happen, when my work is about right now, and manifesting that present tense, because we're not visible right now, and who's going to be responsible for that in the future? That's not what I'm concerned with. I'm concerned with right now, maybe later tonight, maybe the next morning, and that happening over and over and over again, and getting away from thinking about linear time. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's what composers and musicians and improvisers have to do, is think very immediately. And so I don't concern myself with the future at all.
The project that Raven and I are working on is like this. It's called Being Future Being because it is about being that, is about conjuring into that better future, but now. Is it a collapse or an expansion of time? I'm not sure, but like it's about being that better future now. So it's like both at once. I have spent years visioning better futures with individuals, with communities of people, and my work really drives forward into those visioning spaces. But yeah, about 2 years ago. I'm echoing, I think, a little bit about both what Jeffrey and Raven you just shared. About 2 years ago, I was like, it feels like then we're always chasing this future forward, and I want it here now. So how do we be that? How do we be that future now?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of what the whole show is asking, that in that now, like, you know, what is that demand and what is that like presentness, and how is like presentness also like a scrambling or like a reclaiming of time, or like a pushing against any sort of like linearity or like trajectory that often, you know, excludes or defers folks. Um, this has been such a rich conversation. I would love for all of you to share anything that you want to plug for upcoming projects. I know our audience are curious about at least your near futures, and where they can see and support your work. And we'll also put up a slide. So if you would put our own upcoming conversations, of course, including the last performance with Raven and Jeff coming up on March 23rd.
I'll start by talking about the next iteration of the performance, which one of the things I think it's important to know is also, and I did know this from the beginning when Jess invited me, I wanted the monument, the structure to accumulate meaning through who activated it and who contributed to it. And I think of it, you know, it was built so that it could be taken down and rebuilt and reused in different parts of wherever it might travel to. So these three performances really kick off like the meaning. They establish the foundational meaning of what the structure is. It will go to De Cordova and I believe open in June. And our programming so far will include Eric Paul Reach, who is a young performance artist and sculptor living in Albuquerque, or outside. Sorry, I believe maybe it's Gallup, maybe not Albuquerque. Yeah. And then Luzine Hill, who lives in Atlanta, Georgia, who is an incredible performance artist and drawer, and then also Dana Claxton, who also is performance and photography. So that's the beginning of it, and we're still adding things to the list, and the structure will maintain the surfaces that are on there now, but we'll be adding to them. And I think now that we know more of the performances, we're just helping those artists to develop what their performances will be.
Yeah, that's super exciting. I hope to go up and see it in its new form. Laura or Emily, anything coming up for y'all?
I started going back to my studio after lots of lockdown and staying home here alone. You know, I live alone. I do, it's just me. So it's been really fun to start just having this evolution of collaborations kick back in like a normal person in private. So I've been working a lot of film soundtracks, many, which has been really great. I still like to create environments and stuff. So I'm working on that. Working on new tracks for my album after that, for the album I never did, you know. So I'm just keep on recording and stuff, and until I can play outside again and greet the day with more live performances, which I miss dearly. And I'll see you there. Come to my show.
Yeah, we're working on Being Future Being, some residencies coming up through the coming year, different processes with a multitude of amazing collaborators. And then, you know, there's always a host of these Zoom conversations, which I have a love and hate relationship with. You know, I'm loving how much, and loving how often and how many conversations are happening. I've had, I think, 3 about this performance, you know, and and so they generate their own kind of relationships and energy, and I've been really appreciative of that. My face gets tired, but other than that, so there's lots of those kinds of things happening, and I can't remember them all, so you'd have to find them, like you have. And I'll see you, Laura, at your performances for sure.
Yeah. We'll go to Raven's thing.
Oh yeah.
I mean Jeffrey's thing.
Yeah. We're gonna be there.
We'll rope you in for sure.
Great, thank you all so much, and we look forward to that performance and all the other performances and experiences coming up. And Audrey will close us out.
Whoa. I'm done. I'm closed. No. Thank you, Danilo. Thank you, Raven. Thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you, Emily, for your time, for sharing, for your spirits and your process. It's, for me personally, it's been so wonderful getting to know all of you in these different ways, and really for your grace and dexterousness and adaptability in trying to do programming and bring things to our community during this time and over last year. I mean, I was actually reflecting on, you know, Raven, your performance. It began as trying to compose music for kids at Long Island City High School. It was going to be June 6, 2020.
Yeah.
So, oh yeah. There's been a lot. I might as well say the things that were supposed to happen, since imagine happening in some alternate universe. But yeah, there was going to be a high school marching band playing out there in the field. But another time.
We'll have you back somehow. But just really, I want to just like put that out, because in all these different ways we've been able to make magic. And for you, Raven and Jeffrey, really excited. That's the next thing we're gonna do, talking about making that real. So thank you everybody for joining us from all over, for sharing this evening, for sharing in Monuments Now and these performances. The exhibition will be up through March 14th, the entirety of it. It's gonna kind of come down little by little. We'll have a new show coming up after that. The park is open every day, 9 a.m. to sunset, thanks to our small but mighty staff. Everything's on our website and our social media. Raven's performance will either land on the 23rd or 24th. We'll have a video for that as well. And the last of our Emerging Artist Fellow conversations, which Danilo has also been running wonderfully, will be next week, March 11th. So huge gratitude, lots of gratitude coming in through the chat. Take good care. Hopefully see you soon, not on a screen. And thanks everybody on behalf of Socrates Sculpture Park. Really appreciate you. Take care, everybody. See you out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.